Okay, everyone, thank you for joining us this evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 5:32 p.m. This is a regular meeting of the Stuart City Commission on October 26th. Ms. Kindle, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Meyer,
Here.
Vice Mayor Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Bruner,
Here.
Commissioner Matheson,
Here.
Commissioner McDonald.
Here.
Please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would just like to recognize that we have a local official in our audience tonight, Jackie Thurlow-Lippish, our governing board member for the South Florida Water Management District. Thank you for joining us. And former City Commissioner Nick Blunt.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to our presentation. The American Planners Association presenting the 2020 APA Florida Chapter Great Places in Florida People's Choice Award to the City of Stuart.
Thank you, Mayor Meyer. Jim Kurolski, Community Services Director for the record, and I will be introducing the APA Great Places in Florida Award. Little background on this award. Martin County's Planning Department with Nikki Van Vano let the Tourism Office know, the Martin County Office of Tourism and Marketing, and I'm sure you're familiar with Narissa and Ian who work there. They let us know about this award that was done by the American Planning Association called Great Places in Florida. Was one of those voting things. We got everything out. I wasn't sure we were going to win, but guess what? We won. Yeah. So I would like to introduce a couple of people that are very important. First, Julia Alex McGee, who's the executive director for APA Florida, who drove all the way down from Tallahassee today and caught her in the car. It's a long drive to present an award, but it was worth it. And then also a colleague of mine that I've known for years and years and years on our sister city, which is St. Lucie and Fort Pierce, who's Corey Benton, who's a member of the APA Florida Executive Committee, and he serves as the Treasure Coast Section Chair. Also here are members from the Stuart Main Street program, which is President Nick Schroth, and also Executive Director Candace Callahan, and also DBA President Bill Moore. Is there anyone else here from DBA Main Street? Great. So, Mayor, what we're going to do is we're going to ask Corey to come up and actually present the award. I have it. And as he explains to you the award, I'll meet you up there and then we'll get a big picture with the commission and all the downtowners. Okay?
Okay.
Corey.
Good evening, Mayor Meyer, members of the commission, members of the downtown community in Stuart, Florida. It's an honor to be here this evening and present downtown Stuart with the Great Places in Florida Award on behalf of APA Florida. I am the section chair for the Treasure Coast and have the opportunity to represent St. Lucie, Martin, Indian River, and Okeechobee counties. And I'm very pleased to have Alex joining all the way from Tallahassee, as Jim stated. You know, this award is incredible, and it highlights this community's vision, commitment to its character itself and vision, and all the efforts that have been rallied around restoration of this historic downtown, embrace of the waterfront, community, small business, and again, highlighted by the Main Street. I was honored in 2014 to join the city of Stuart in hosting the Main Street Florida conference and working for the city of Fort Pierce and historic preservation. We've been very collaborative in downtown Stuart with augmenting the history, you know, the lyric theater, and all of the amazing community venues that bring people together and make community, the quality of life that we've learned to grow and highlight and emphasize through the Planning Association. This year, we had over a dozen nominations. The city of Stuart was in the finalists within 3, and we went to the public's choice In the city of Stuart, downtown Stuart, with over 5,000 votes cast, received over 60% of the vote up against the competition. So very well done with that. Overwhelming support. This is our 7th year in honoring great places in Florida, and it highlights community, neighborhoods, and the charm in parks, recreation, and a commitment to community. So pat yourselves on the back in this community for rallying around and supporting downtown Stuart in this award. So without further ado, we're very happy to present this award from the state APA Florida. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, colleagues, let's get down and take a big group photo together.
Wow, look at that sucker.
Don't break it, Jim.
That's gonna look really good in my office.
How about Vice Mayor? Will you hold it with me? And there's no better time than planning month.
Nick, do you want to borrow my tie?
I'm gonna draw on the back of your head.
Get it all in? Oh, boy, picture. Does everybody? Not gonna need more. We're probably gonna need the podium on the way. Hold on.
No, if I draw on the back of your head.
More like the Ashley gang or something. It's like you guys are gonna rob a bank.
Sorry about what I wrote on the back of your head.
Oh, I was out sick last week.
I wrote kill ones.
No, I'll get back to him tomorrow, but I literally was sick, almost. I can all center for you. So, yeah, I will.
Hey, I'll take it.
I don't want to break it either. Any more speeches? Does she want to say anything? She came over with her glasses. Thank you.
Thank you all so very much. Thank you. A great honor, and I always, anytime we get anything like this, it's kind of like a little twinge that, oh no, there's going to be more people that know about our great little secret here in the city of Stuart. I'm sure there's a few in the audience who would rather us not win, so there's no more tourists. But it's wonderful for us, so good job, everyone. We'll move on next to our comments by my colleagues up on the Board of City Commission. Commissioner Bruner.
Well, receiving that award is what I'm always saying. I think this is the greatest little city in the state of Florida, greatest little county in the state of Florida. I love it when we win these awards, especially when people are always saying how terrible and how yucky the city is. It's just, it's a wonderful little city, and I'm so grateful and happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Matheson.
Thank you. Kind of a question for everyone. It's a little bit rhetorical, but I know most people in this room probably have had complaints with any form of government here in our country. And the beauty of our country is that you're allowed to have those complaints. But I kind of have one rule in my book that if you want to have those complaints, you need to vote. And if you don't vote, you don't get to have those complaints. And that being said, we're in election time, and I just want to stress to everyone out there how important voting is. Yesterday, I got to help out with the NAACP, did a Souls to the Polls event, and they loaded up golf carts in East Stuart and brought people to go vote at the Supervisor of Elections office on MLK. And that's one of the most important things we can do in this country. Doesn't matter who you vote for, that's your choice. But voting in and of itself cannot be underestimated of how important it is. On a different topic, the rain just doesn't seem to stop. Lake Okeechobee's at 16.3 plus feet. And, we're most likely, we're still on a week-to-week scale of the Corps assessing discharges, but we really need a solid week or more of dry weather. As of today, we're receiving 1,900 CFS out of the S80. Again, they're working on a 7-day moving average of 1,800 CFS. And so the lower days are when we're having higher king tide effects in the South Fork. They are trying to work with us. As I told my fellow commissioner, last week I reached out to Lieutenant Colonel Polk and asked him if the city of Stuart could host the Corps for a briefing on what we might expect over the next couple wet seasons, really the short-term future for our residents. And he accepted. Mr. Hogarth and I'll work with his staff to pin down some dates, but most likely we'll be looking at hosting the Army Corps at our meeting in December, the first meeting in December. We have some loose ends to tie up, but I think, working with them at this point, seeing how they're going to manage the lake during the dry season, they'll know a lot more over the next few weeks as we get out of the wet season and see where we stand. So I look forward to that, and that's something we can all look forward to. And those are all my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Commissioner McDonald?
Yeah, a couple of quick things. One, just to add on to Commissioner Matheson, maybe at the same time we have the Army Corps, or maybe at a different meeting, we could ask Martin County to come with their consultants and give us a briefing on, our general fund, Martin County tax dollars, our residents are going to pay for all of those consultants. And so I think it would be valuable to hear from them to find out what they're doing on our behalf, which is quite extensive. So if maybe we can coordinate that as well. And if we can incorporate it into the same meeting, I think that would be great. Do you have any problem with that?
No, not at all.
Okay, great. So I think that would be good. Second thing was I received a call from Commissioner Hetherington over at the county a week or so ago regarding Tobacco 21, which is a changing the age of tobacco to purchase of tobacco to 21. The county is taking up an ordinance tomorrow. Currently, federal law requires tobacco sales to be 21. State and local law does not. I spoke with staff about this, and and they have some. They believe that maybe we should need to wait until the legislature reviews this. There's been some bills that failed in committee last year, so that we don't do something we just get preempted from. But maybe but apparently law enforcement has difficulty enforcing the 21-year-old age, or because it is not embedded in the state law. Maybe Ms. Morchell can give us more on that.
I can also tell you that Ben actually followed up on the bill from last
Yeah,
year.
that's right, Ben did.
And it did not fail in committee. It actually made it all the way through and passed. And the governor vetoed it. And then I don't know where he is, but it was based on something to do with the flavored vape that was the issue that got it vetoed. I don't know the details of that, which is unfortunate. But basically, the federal law right now that passed January of 20 says that you have to be 21 years old to buy tobacco products, including vape. The state law and the state statute says you have to be 18 years old to buy tobacco products. So if a 19-year-old walked into a 7-Eleven and bought tobacco products, they'd be violating the federal law and complying with the state law, which makes it difficult for the police to enforce and which one they want to direct. The only downside to it, that I see, I mean, my thought process on it is the state's probably going to catch up. You as a city have the right to pass it if you want to make it 21 and consistent with the federal law. Currently, medical marijuana is illegal in federal law. So we choose to follow the state law. In this case, we would say we follow state law when it comes to marijuana vaping and federal law when it comes to cigarette vaping, which makes it a little bit complicated, but not to say that you couldn't do it. And just like the straw ordinance, the reality of it is, if you pass the ordinance, 90% of the stores would follow the 21-year-old thing. And those anomalies where there was somebody challenging it or whatever, if they fell through the cracks, it wouldn't really matter anyway, because the effect would have taken place.
So in order to have one, hopefully one consistent ordinance through the whole county, because the county cannot, I asked her if they cannot do an ordinance that includes incorporate it, Martin County, areas of Martin County under their ordinance they are doing. So if it's the will of the commission, I'd like to have staff look at this, look at the county's ordinance, see if we can adapt it and bring it back. If we have consensus on that, to raise the age for purchasing tobacco to 21.
I'm in favor of.
Again, my opinion on the subject would be to wait and see what happens in this legislative session before we pursue a local ordinance, because there is preemptive language in the state statute language that you'd be creating an ordinance for nothing if that passes.
But if the governor vetoed it last time, and so it's not like it didn't pass, it actually went through. But again, if it's up to the commission. So
I'd like to see what the county is working on and
yeah, they're actually going
coordinate.
to hopefully pass it tomorrow.
Okay.
So, and I gave a copy of the proposed ordinance to Mike and Dave, and if you could share that with the other commissioners.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, and then maybe we can bring that back for discussion. And if we want, maybe what we can do is wait until January, see if there's any bills filed. Because by the time we get to it anyways, it'd be the first year probably. So, well, I'd be fine to wait and see what is filed, and we can track that and see if there is something that it looks like could be progressing. But if it doesn't get filed again because it got vetoed last year, then we can go move forward without a problem.
I'm open to hearing about it. I think we should have the county pass it first, you know. If they're hearing it tomorrow, let's see what comes of it. And I imagine it'll be 2 readings at the county level. And then it could come back once the county's made a move or something. I do like the idea of hearing what happens at the state level as well.
And it's my understanding as well that the county ordinances are enforced by code enforcement rather than by the sheriff.
Okay, sounds like you've got your kind of majority, at least.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that I think we all attended last week a joint city county school board meeting. We don't have those too often. They're like twice a year, but it was a very good meeting. And I'm just hoping that those who couldn't come to that meeting will go online and see the reports from the school board and the county as to what is going on. And something that kind of interested me in that meeting, I know the city of Stuart made a report of some of the development that has happened in the past few months. I'd like to ask our city manager to somehow come together and see if we can get some type of a development report or something for us, at least on a quarterly basis or something, even if it's a summary of things that are already approved, or so that we at least have an idea. And maybe, I don't know if development department currently puts that up on the website now, but some kind of a way to kind of track certain things. And also with regard to the city of Stuart and the county, I think we're mostly in District 1 and District 2 for the county commission. But with all the flooding and all the other things that are going on, that we have to coordinate so closely with the county, with fire, with flooding, with other things. If there's some major projects in especially District 1 and District 2 for the county, if we could just hear about those, even though they may be out in the county, some of them may be affecting the city, or some of them, of course, would be in the city because we are a part of the county and there's some projects that they will be doing that that may affect us. So I'd like to know that. My other thing is today at our CRA meeting at 4:30, the city clerk put on a very excellent presentation on civility and how to deal with disruptions during meetings and how people should present themselves during meetings. I'm not sure if the city clerk had promised if that presentation would be on the website for people to see what our rules and guidelines are. But it's already on there on the website.
It's attached to the agenda item.
I know, oh, but that's the only way that they can, but I'm
But that's
saying
on the
we
web.
can have a little click so that people can always go to it and check on it. If that could be on the website so people know our civility rules and look at that. Today also I attended a seminar with regard to the CRA, and I know most of our city commission was on the line for that. It was very good. And of course, very helpful, always refreshing to hear how the Florida statutes apply to our community and how we can do better to improve things in our community. And I just like to thank Miss, I'm gonna say it wrong, either Savdas Gandhi or Gandhi Savdas, and Mr. Jim Krulski. You know, other than our police and fire, our downtown is, and our students at the 10th Street Rec Center and the people who use our parks and so on, those are big in our community. And I just want to thank Mr. Kralski and for those who work, the Main Street people, the boards who work with us to make our community the place where we can get this award for being a place of choice. I just want to thank Mr. Kralski and his staff and all those who are associated with doing that. That is so important. Mr. City Manager, I wanted to ask about the well, I have one here about CRA plans being shelved, but I mentioned that at the CRA meeting early at 4:30. Those who are online, you can go back and look at what happened at our CRA meeting at 4:30 today. But I just wanted to ask Mr. City Manager, what's our word from the DOT with regard to the Roosevelt Bridge with our big holiday season coming up? Are we on the same schedule?
I talked to Jerry this morning, actually, and he has not mentioned any changes to the schedule. So as far as I'm concerned, we're still on the same schedule, which is late
February.
November, early December.
Okay. All right, thank you. No further comments.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I have no comments this evening, and I will turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Dias.
Yes, sir. I'd like to continue item number 8, which is ordinance 2422-2020 to a date certain of November 23rd. I had a reach out over the weekend from a wireless consortium that would like to speak with me and staff about that ordinance and some of the legalities of it as it may conflict with state statutes. I'm asking for a continuance of that item.
Do you have a date certain for that?
November 23rd. I'm also asking to add an item in the approval of the agenda to add the extension of the declaration of emergency. We can either add that to the consent or commission action, whichever you prefer. And then I do have the results of the e-scooter survey that was asked for, that was conducted by Main Street. And if it's the pleasure, we can add a D&D to the end and I can present that to you, or we can have it on a different meeting, whichever you prefer.
What do my colleagues think? Do we want to have a discussion at D&D this evening about the results of the scooter?
Can you provide us the results of the survey? We could discuss it at another meeting so we have time to look at it, digest it.
Yeah, we can. It's very quick. You're going to digest it like that.
We can have it after. I mean,
That's fine then.
D&D after was fine with me.
Okay.
Mr. Merrill,
I'm sorry.
I was going to ask
Vice
about
Mayor.
item number 9, since the city manager mentioned. I had a call and a message, and I think I sent the message to Mr. Mortel a resident, who's not a resident, they're in Martin County. They had some question on the land development regulation. I think it's in item number 9.
And Commissioner Clark, I did have a lengthy conversation with her and I'm prepared to discuss that at the agenda item.
Okay, so we don't have to table the agenda item. We'll just
Yeah.
make it a part of the discussion.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Matheson.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda, continuing item number 8 to a date certain of November 23rd, adding a D&D at the end of the meeting regarding downtown use of scooters, and adding to commission action resolution 133-2020 regarding the continuation of our state of emergency.
Second. Oh, sorry. Troy seconded.
I have a motion by Commissioner Matheson and a second by Commissioner McDonald for the agenda with a declaration of state of emergency in commission action, D&D on scooters results, and item number 8 being continued to a date certain of November 23rd. Is there any public comment on the motion to approve the agenda with these edits? If there is any public comment this evening, please approach and fill out a green card with Ms. Kindle. If there's any online, please raise your hand. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Dias, is that it for your comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll move on now to general comments by the public. To Vice Mayor Clark's point, we did have a refresher presentation at today's CRA, CRB commission meeting about our civility and our rules for public comment. If you would like to make a general public comment, please approach Ms. Kindle, collect a green card, fill it out in advance of your comment. If you want to make a comment on any item on the agenda this evening, please do so as well. If you are online, please raise your hand during the appropriate time. We will take public comment before a vote is called. I have 2 green cards for general public comment, the first being Ms. Jackie Thurlow-Lippisch.
Hello, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. It's great to be here and congratulations on your well-earned award. That is so exciting. I'm here for something not so exciting, but I wanted to be here so that you know that I am here and that the Water Management District is here. As you know, since October 14th, as Mr. Matheson, Commissioner Matheson, so well keeps up with, the Army Corps has been releasing from Lake Okeechobee. I called most of you and told you about a web page that the district has created, district actions to reduce discharges to the northern estuaries. When you go South Florida Water Management District, it comes up right away and you can hit more. It tells you all the details you do not want to know, but it is there for you to know, and it's important. What happened today is that Drew Bartlett, the executive director for the South Florida Water Management District, and Eric Sutton, who is the executive director for the Florida Wildlife Commission, sent a letter to the Army Corps, to Colonel Kelly, asking for an emergency order to release water very southerly in the system through the S12s, because Conservation Area 1 is drowning, as is Conservation Area 2, and that leads into Conservation Area 3. That is important for people. It's also extremely important for wildlife. The animals don't have any place to stand. The deer, the rabbits, and other animals, unless you're a bird, are standing on the tree islands. They run out of food. They're very, it's a terrible thing. In years past, they've starved. It's the truth. We need to know it. And the thing that can happen through those water conservation areas for us is that when they're lower, you can move some of the water through the stormwater treatment areas into the water conservation areas and out the East Coast, as the district has been doing with permission from the Army Corps this year, and also send some of that water south. So I just wanted you to know what's going on. And it's very disappointing that we're discharging. And we are, at least, not to make it better, because it's not ever going to be better when we're discharging, but October is a better month to discharge than June or July, because the algae in the lake is not showing itself, even though it is hiding in the water column. And so we all work together. I think it's awesome that you're having the roundtable basically with the Corps. I hope you'll invite me. That is the way to do it through relationships. That is how we change the world, is through relationships. And Colonel Kelly, I believe, is scheduled, they might change it, but he's scheduled to leave in I think next year. So they've extended them before. They extended Jennifer Reynolds, and we're like trying like this to get them to extend the colonel. But you know, you never know who the next colonel's going to be and what his or her personality will be like. I'm just being honest. And so build those relationships. And if you want to build one with me, good or bad, I am here. Thank you for all you do. And again, congratulations.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you,
Thurlow.
Jack.
Thank you for your continued support and advocacy. We're so lucky to have you fighting for us there with the Water Management District. Next, we have Ms. Joselia Powell.
Good evening. I have a question. In the last meeting, the Kiwanis Park, they're getting renovations and they got a grant to get, I guess, some more stuff over there, and that's fantastic. My question is, how do we get renovations or funds allocated to have some updates done to the Martin Luther King Park and to the parks on 10th Street?
Thank you, Ms. Powell. I just got reprimanded today at our earlier meeting that we are not by code allowed to be answering questions back and forth during public comment, but we can address them during our deliberations. But I'll invite you also to reach out to me after the meeting. Any of the commissioners, our city manager, please collect our contact information. My card's up there in the office, and we can talk offline.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Gwen,
Is there any other public comment?
Gwen.
Ms. Gwendolyn Hall Brinkley?
Oh, good evening. I'm back. Last week, there was a discussion about Moore Cemetery. And I talked to some people in the community and was explaining to them the timeline and trying to give them the best I could, but we basically talked about the 5 years and the 3 months. And with the people that I talked with, we would like to see that timeline be 5 and 5. 5 years anytime. And if you're new to the community, we like to see it be 5 years present. We also, and this is not to make it a Black cemetery. We understand that that can't be done, but we would like to see some kind of a signage or something that marks Moore Cemetery as a historically Black cemetery. For years, that was the only place that our ancestors could be buried. And it may not mean nothing to nobody else, but to us, it means everything. So we would like to see that become a historically Black landmark, or however you guys can do it, as well as to make those years 5 and 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall Brinkley. Is there any other public comment, general public comment for this evening here in person, any online? Seeing none, we will move on to our consent calendar.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner McDonald and a second by Vice Mayor Clark. Is there any discussion, any public comment on consent? Any online? Seeing none, Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Meyer.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on next to our commission action item number 5, the East Stewart Urban Code conditional use for daycare facility. This is listed as a quasi judicial item. Mr. Mortel, would you read the resolution into the record, please?
This is resolution number 106-2020, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, granting a major urban code conditional use approval to the properties located at the northwest corner of Martin Luther King Boulevard, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Southeast Cortez Avenue, as described within the attached legal descriptions, granting approval for a licensed child daycare facility on a 0.93 acre site to allow a reduction of 6 required parking spaces, providing an effective date, providing for a timetable of development, providing for conditions of approval and other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. Do my colleagues have any ex parte communications to disclose? Commissioner Bruner?
No, I have none. I'm here with an open mind.
Commissioner Matheson?
I have in the past spoken to the applicant and to staff. I'm here with an open mind.
Commissioner McDonald?
Spoke with the applicant and with staff, and I'm here with an open mind.
I have none and I'm here with an open mind.
I have spoken with the applicants and staff, and I am here with an open mind. Mr. Mortel, would you swear those giving
Would
testimony?
those giving testimony tonight please stand and raise your right hand? Let the record reflect there are 4 people, 2 staff and 2 with the applicant. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect they all testified affirmatively, and you could please state your name when testifying.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Stephen Mayor for the record, Development Department. The item before you tonight is a resolution. It's for a major urban code conditional use approval for the Sean Reed Daycare. It is on Martin Luther King Boulevard, Junior Boulevard and Cortez Avenue. The applicant is Sean Donna Rita there here this tonight, as well as their agent. Thank you for reading the resolution title into the record. The location, as I've mentioned, is at the northwest corner of Cortez and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. It is a vacant parcel at 0.93 acres in size. The future land use is residential low density, which does allow for daycare uses. And that is not being changed. And the zoning district is general residential and office within the East Stewart sub-district. And that also is not being changed. It allows for daycares, but under 3 acres is a major conditional use, which I'll get to in these waivers that are requested. Waivers being a loose term, obviously, but something that is a deviation of the urban code. The first one is the uses pursuant to section 3.0205B, granting of an approval of a licensed child daycare facility under 3 acres is a conditional use approval. The applicant has provided a site plan and it conforms with the supplemental standards that are within section 20604. And within this small site, the applicant has designed the site to provide adequate buffer to the north along the alleyway and the single family homes on the Southeast 6th Street. With the only exception, they meet all the other applicable sections of code, landscaping, drive aisles, etc., dumpster location, all that. The only thing that they're asking for beside the use is that the number of parking required. They're asking for a reduction of 6 spaces from the required parking spaces. Staff does recommend approval of this waiver based on the priority of providing adequate buffering and the sidewalk connection and also the one-way circulation over the excess of parking. The use is anticipated to utilize drop-off and neighborhood clients that may prefer to walk. The applicant is also the current operator of a daycare center in the neighborhood and will attest to the efficiency of their drop-off and pickup procedures. How it breaks down in terms of what the number of spaces that they're required versus what is the max amount that of their use of 117 children. It requires 35 spaces and they're providing 29. This is the site plan. I want to thank the applicant and their agent for responding to CRB earlier this month. CRB had several, three conditions that they responded to, as well as staff. One thing that they had done in this revised site plan is that they extended the buffer throughout the entire northern part of the property, and this is a 15-foot buffer. They also provided a sidewalk connection along here, and they also changed their circulation from a two-way to a one-way in and a one-way out of Martin Luther King, and one-way into to Cortez. These are all changes that they've made, and the rest of the site is in compliance with code. The one thing that was dropped, which then is a new waiver request of 6 spaces, is the provision of spaces along Martin Luther King, which staff, we support the waiver request of 6 spaces reduction versus providing those on street. This is a landscape plan. Landscape plan is in conformance. It does have the changes that we and the CRB recommended, which was the extension of the buffer. And this is their elevations. If all those do meet code. On October 6th, the CRB recommended approval with the item with conditions I had mentioned. The applicant provided a revised plan incorporating those conditions. Certain elements such as the on-street parking have been removed. Those on-street parking was something that staff had recommended at first. Staff does recommend approval of Resolution 106/2020 with the revised site plan. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is here to answer questions, or if you have any questions of staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Commissioner Bruner?
I see on here that he doesn't have to put in the 6-foot sidewalk. He's putting in 8 feet sidewalks.
He's
Correct?
He's putting in 8 feet sidewalk.
I like that all the way around. I really do.
Yeah.
I will move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Bruner and a second by Commissioner McDonald for approval. Just so I'm clear, Mr. Mayor, staff had originally recommended the creation of on-street parallel parking spaces along MLK. And you are saying you now are supportive of the reduction in the parking requirement over those spaces. Can you elaborate on that a bit
I can
more?
elaborate. Yes, after the CRB recommended the circulation change to one-way, which gave a lot of room for the agent to work with the site plan and provide the parking on the north side. Originally, staff, when it was a two-way, there wasn't a lot of space for that to work. So we thought that those spaces should be relocated onto the Martin Luther King. Because of the new layout of the site, there was enough space to put those on the north side, not have to put them on street. So
Thank you,
we
sir.
accept the 6 spaces versus originally it was 2 spaces that we were asking for. Now we're asking for 6, and we just think that's a cleaner design.
Yes, Commissioner.
Mayor, I have a couple comments. I do support the motion. I'd like to see one, a bike rack added. I frequently drop my daughter off at a daycare near my house. Obviously, I don't take a car, but I do take a bike. Normally, it's quick and easy, but there are times, or have been in the past, when I'd prefer to chain my bike up and walk in and spend some time there. But in this being the neighborhood that it is, I'm supportive of a more functional parking lot and plan than the hard line for the required parking spaces. I think in this area, we should be encouraging people to bike, to walk. You know, what I envision is maybe a bike rack, single Stuart bike rack, and kind of almost a thoughtful area where a stroller would be parked while someone is, hopefully, when we get past COVID, walking their child into the room and having a conversation with the teacher like the good old days. The other thing I'd like to see, knowing that it butts up to the residential property, is the landscape plan states for firebush. The common name is kind of the hedge material in the back. I'd like to see that maintained at a chest to head high level once it reaches that maturity age, to give more privacy to the residential homeowners. So if Commissioner Bruner would consider amending her motion for those, I'd certainly support the project, but frankly, I ride my daughter to a daycare on my bike, and I know I'm not the only one who would take advantage of that situation.
Commissioner, before we ask for an amendment, let's just clarify with the applicant and or agent if those changes are amenable. Mr. Reed?
Yes, Sean Reed. Yeah, we're all for a bike rack.
I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
And as for the maintaining the hedge at a height of head height,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Lots of butterflies in those bushes.
Hopefully.
There will be if it's
Thank
fire
you.
bush. Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Bruner, would you like to amend your motion?
Yes, Mary, I think got that to, the higher on the bushes and, a bike, rack.
I'll amend my second.
We can't hear her.
Microphone. Me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Hold it up.
Commissioner Matheson, asked for me to amend a bike rack. And I will, and for the bushes to, be higher before they're cut, and I will, thank you.
I'll amend my second as well.
Okay. Commissioner Bruner has amended her motion and Commissioner McDonald has amended his second. Any further discussion, any further questions, Vice Mayor?
Oh, okay.
Seeing none, is there any public comment before we call for a vote?
What's the schedule for this again? Be done by March or April?
Mr. Reed, I'm sorry, you'll have to come and approach and speak
forgot.
into the
I didn't-
microphone.
I didn't check the schedule.
For it to be built by next year,
Yes.
April?
Yeah.
No, I think that'd be too soon.
Okay, okay. I
Yeah,
wasn't
that'd probably
sure.
be like a start date.
Okay,
by
I
the
wasn't
time we
sure
get
what your
permits.
schedule.
Yeah,
I didn't remember looking carefully at that.
yeah, that'd be really tough.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Any public comment in the room, any online? Seeing none. Ms. Kindle, will you call the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Clark,
Yes,
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Mayor Meyer.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
I'm the proud product of childcare myself. Need more of it for our working parents.
Thank you for supporting.
For those of you who have not been at a meeting with us for some time and are looking through the agenda, you may find it strange that we have ordinance second reading before ordinance first
We
reading.
still
This
have a
is-
second action item.
Oh, yes, that's right. Our resolution, that's right, our resolution 133-20,
2020, yes, Matt.
2020 for this extension of a state of emergency.
This is resolution number 133-2020, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, extending the declaration of a state of local emergency pertaining to COVID-19, providing an effective date and further purposes. And the only change to the prior resolution is that a whereas was added that states, whereas on October 23rd, 2020, the Department of Health offices of Tallahassee, Leon County, Florida, renewed its declaration of public health emergency as COVID-19 continues to pose a threat to public health in the state of Florida and requires ongoing measures to be taken to protect public health. And that was passed on Friday.
Yeah, I saw that order from Dr. Ripke's. Okay, do I have a motion for approval?
Move for approval.
second.
I have a motion by Commissioner McDonald and a second by Vice Mayor Clark. Is there any public comment on the extension of the state of local emergency? Seeing none, any online? Seeing none. Ms. Kindle, call the roll, please.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark,
Yes,
Mayor Meyer.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Mortel. Again, second reading is now happening before first reading so that usually there are not significant changes to our second reading ordinances. So we will move on to item number 6, our evaluation and appraisal report, EAR. Mr. Mortel.
This is ordinance number 2442-2020, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, adopting the evaluation and appraisal report, EAR, for the comprehensive plan of the City of Stuart, stating the intent of the City Commission to amend the comprehensive plan based upon recommendations contained in the report, and approving transmittal of the evaluation and appraisal report to the Department of Economic Opportunity and any other interested governmental entity providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for an effective date, and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. Mr. Mayor and or Mr. Freeman?
Yes, probably maybe both of us. Stephen Mayer for, I don't know for the record, but Stephen Mayer, Development Department. This is the adoption or second hearing of ordinance 2440, 2020, which is our evaluation and appraisal report process. It is a process we do every 7 or so years. It is the principal process for updating our local comprehensive plan to reflect changes in local conditions and the state policy concerning planning and growth management. On June 22nd, 2020, that you guys provided instructions for staff regarding the draft year. We incorporated those at that time, provided you a clean transmittal package, which was final and intact for review. To approve those for transmittal, we transmitted those to the Department of Economic Opportunity, DEO. They had 2 months to review the year. On September 15, 2020, the DEO issued what's called an objections, recommendations, and comments or ORC report, along with the review of all the other applicable state agencies. The DEO has reviewed our EAR, found it in compliance with 1 objection and 1 comment. So the DEO recommendation you can see here is regarding our affordable housing or attainable housing definitions and some of the details in those sections. And what I want to do is I just wanted to show you the DEO recommendation and their comment. Their comment is the 5-year schedule for capital improvements was not included because at the time it wasn't finalized. I will be able to work with staff on getting our CIE update to them during the adoption. So staff recommended changes is to follow the DEO recommendation. And I've laid out what that means to the affordable housing, where you would have affordable housing definition remains. It wouldn't. Affordable housing was what it was called beforehand, before we even tried to change that to attainable housing. We would keep that definition and add in what the state would like to see. Affordable workhouse income is the term they would like to use, and that those not include utility payments along with the 30% of their household income. That is all those are all directions that they've given us to not include that and to include this term affordable workforce. Very low, we would keep the suggested that we transmitted. Low income, same thing. That's what we initially adopted. Transmitted. We would then also keep moderate income. It is something that's in the definition of affordable housing is low, moderate, very low, and affordable workforce. So we would keep this moderate income as it is in our comp plan, but changing it from the Stuart median to the HUD AMI for Martin County, which is a more specific definition or number. We would add affordable to that workforce housing definition. So at current, we have workforce housing. They use the term affordable workforce housing, but it would not, instead of meaning what we had before, it's going to mean that as the state defines, an income no greater than 120%, again, of the HUD AMI. And then we would add the term attainable housing, which would mean an income no less than 80 and no greater than 100%, which would fall within the bracket of moderate income, but it would be something that we would be able to use as our own term. And that is something that we believe we could do. If you want.
So considering the objections carefully, and also considering the long and lengthy discussions we had in the city with the local planning agency, workshops, and the city commission, we recommend meeting the requirements of the DEO in terms of what they would like us to see reinsert, but in addition, retain the city's own definition of attainable housing. Now, this is where we're not certain if they would accept this, but we, in doing this, do meet the intent of the objections that we've heard. We did have telephone conversation with DEO, and they did express some feeling for the city's attempt to get a better definition in there, but they were themselves having to apply the statute in terms of definitions and what those words mean. We did check state statute. There is no definition available or being used at the moment for attainable housing. So I think that leaves the option open for the city to use its own definition. And then as we move forward with policy decisions, that will be in the comprehensive plan and available for the city commission and other boards to use. So our recommendation is to move forward with the language as we've prepared, and hopefully the DEO will respond favorably to that.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Just to be clear, what is the timetable for us needing to submit this or to approve the second reading of this ordinance? Wait, did I read that we have until next year?
Oh, that was 180.
Yeah, 180 days.
From the receipt of their
From
letter?
our receipt, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see this in the documents attached to the agenda item. And so I really want to read this through a little bit more before we sign off on this. I appreciate you bringing that up. I was going to suggest that we come into compliance with the state statute, but I don't want to lose sight of the hard work that we did in trying to define a new category and holding new development, right? Leveraging that as a tool for new development to use. I need to see it all together and sit on it for a second before I approve this. This is a big deal. And so I am disappointed I didn't get a chance to read that. All I had that was updated was the DEO letter. Yeah. And I didn't see in there also the update to the CIP. Is that also going to be, I mean, I know that's a simple thing. It's just updating it to our current plan.
Yeah, that's something that we're working to put together.
I would like to, I just can't feel good approving it without just looking at it once, since we do this once every 7 years. So that's what I have to say about that. I don't know how my colleagues feel.
After researching the agenda, I've had some conversations with staff on this today, but I can support the way you're going. This is a big deal, and I'm very happy with what I'm looking at on my screen now after my conversations with staff, and it is the right direction, I believe, and hopefully the DEO will agree with the route we're trying to do with what came out of our housing workshop of the definition that we feel is truly obtainable to the teacher, waitress, someone who wants to work and live in the city of Stuart with that 80 to 100% AMI. It's just we're having a discrepancy on the definitions with the DEO.
Right, absolutely. Again, I don't feel comfortable approving it on second reading, our final bite at the apple, without holding this a little bit more and having the chance to actually read it in light of the changes. I want to make sure we get it right, and I trust that staff will do the right thing. But
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Commissioner.
I wasn't part of the, I observed a couple of the things, so I'm gonna defer to the commission's judgment on this, but question for, I'm not sure if it's for Kevin, Dave, or Mike. What's the likelihood of DEO allowing us, to letting us do something different, say something going back to what we originally had said?
As a complete outsider on it, because I didn't talk to the DEO, but the DEO's problem was that our definitions were inconsistent with the definitions in the state statute. So it's pretty creative on the developments department's part to find a definition that's not provided for in the state statute, so they can't say it's inconsistent. So it kind of takes their argument away, and it creates a new form of housing, essentially. It just makes it easier for you guys as a board to say to a developer, can you add attainable housing, without having a 30-minute debate as to what that means.
And if I may jump in, I think the reason we went through this whole rigmarole in the first place is that developers were coming to us claiming that they were in compliance with our comp plan and offering affordable housing to us as a benefit and asking for density bonuses. And yet their affordable housing met the state definition, which was 140 AMI, which is higher than market rate. So the state might say that that is a affordable unit technically, but realistically on the ground, it's more expensive than what the market was supporting. So
they took Miami into consideration when they're figuring their average rents.
So anyway, not to, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to maybe to loop in Representative Overdorf and Senator Harrell as well to maybe help, muscle it a little bit through the
Like I
legislature.
said, I'm gonna defer to you
Yeah.
guys, but I was just asking that, want to get that question out there. There is, are we going to, is this something that we can challenge? So
Yeah, I hear that. And I think at very least, this, at my first glance of it, again, I want to look at it a little bit more. Let's just come into compliance. It sounds like that's what we're saying with the letter that we got from the DEO, but also at least try one more time to define our new category. If they bite, great. But yeah, to Mr. Mortel's point, their main objection was that our revised definition of affordable housing was inconsistent with the state statute. So I understand. We won't mess with their definition. We'll just make something new that makes sense for our community. So I would ask my colleagues to not pass this.
would you like a continuance?
I'd like to.
I'll move to continue it. How much time do you need to?
What I might suggest, or what I should suggest, is we run this by DEO before it comes back to commission.
Okay.
And we can get an informal feedback at staff level to see what they're thinking about
I'll
this.
move to continue until you get comments back from DEO.
Second.
Okay, great.
Does that work
But
for
no
you?
longer than 180 days.
Correct.
Yeah, but no, yeah.
I have a motion by, when were we in receipt of the letter? September?
15.
September 15th? Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner McDonald and a second by Vice Mayor Clark. Thank you for that. Any further discussion?
I just do want to point out and celebrate staff that this was the only comment back from DEO of all the changes done in the comp plan. So everything else was accepted.
Yeah. When I reviewed it with staff today, as many changes and adjustments and tweaks that were made, I was very pleased to see that this was all that came back. So.
Yes, sir. Good reminder. Thank you. I don't mean to shake the finger at staff. You've done a great job. I wish I had this in my packet earlier though. Okay, any public comment on this? Any online? Ms. Hall, if you're there, please unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. Yeah, Karen Hall, 1701 Southwest Palm City Road. I just want to thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioners, for your service and for taking time to read this because it is very important. And I appreciate that, everybody just doesn't rubber stamp it. And there's going to be time taken to look at it and make sure that our attainable housing is attainable for our residents. And thank you for looking at this and making good decisions for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Any others? Okay, motion and second. Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Matheson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Meyer.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Thank you again. We'll move on to our item number 7, amendment to the city charter corporate boundary.
And this is-
Mr. Mortel?
This is ordinance 2455-2020, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, to amend the corporate boundary of the city and redefine the boundary of the city as set forth in Appendix A of the city charter as adopted by ordinance number 2028-05 on April 11th, 2005, as amended, redefining the corporate boundary to include all lands annexed to the city through the effective date hereof, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date, and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. Mr. Freeman?
There's been no changes since first reading, and none of us really know if the corporate boundary's right. It's North Star that wrote it.
can you read the whole thing? for us, Mike?
Tried that last time.
Just for everyone's knowledge, if you got a couple days that you can go away to the mountains or something and print out this Bible of a legal description and take a mental walk through our city.
If there's no changes and if the county doesn't want any of the city's land or anything, and the boundaries are correct, I'll move approval of the corporate boundary of the city charter based on the, was it Demand Star, North Star?
North Star.
Is your motion asking for us if we want to ask the county if they want any of our?
Yeah, I was
No,
gonna say, if you
no.
conditionalize that, I don't know if we can do that.
So I'll move approval of ordinance number 2455-2020.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor Clark and a second by Commissioner McDonald. Is there any public comment on this item? Any online? Seeing none. Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Matheson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Meyer.
Yes, motion carries unanimously.
I
Thank
will
you.
note that you just adopted a 19-page legal description.
As we have continued item number 8 until November 23rd, we'll move on to item number
No, you
9. I'm sorry?
You only adopted the agenda, but the
Oh,
item
that's right.
itself-
We must, yeah. Do I have a motion for continuance for item number 8?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner McDonald, Matheson, and a second by Vice Mayor Clark. Any public comment on continuing item number 8? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now officially on to item number 9. This is an amendment to the land development regulations for residential infill stormwater management. It's listed as a quasi judicial item, Mr. Mortel.
It's actually not quasi judicial because it's a general ordinance.
Okay. Mr. Mortel, will you read the ordinance into the record, please?
It's ordinance number 2453-2020, an ordinance of the city of Stuart, Florida, amending section 6.03.00 of the Land Development Code entitled Stormwater Management of Chapter 6 entitled On-Site and Off-Site Development Standards in respect of standards for residential single-family and duplex infill development, providing for repeal of all conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor, Commission. This item arises from staff's recent interactions with developers and neighbors, subsequently to infill residential, specifically to residential infill within the city. And commissioners themselves will be aware of the number of emails or telephone calls that we receive subsequently to development going in, specifically again into historic neighborhoods where properties are built to low and previous requirements, where now we're building to higher stormwater and foundational requirements. So we have situations where we have historic districts. When I say historic, I mean areas and neighborhoods that were built sometime before the most recent code requirements for residential development. So we have infill lots, and they're at a level. When it rains, you're gonna like this. When it rains, they've been able to utilize runoff and areas which are not developed. So they don't really notice the fact that they are situated in a lower elevation than really they should be. And as we see more rain, you'll see areas of the city retaining flooding and puddling. And you'll see lots that have always accommodated this. But as the pressure increases for those developments and lots come in to develop, we have to require them to build to what we call a floodplain elevation. And then it's taken from the crown of the road, 18 inches above the crown of the road, which starts to establish a level which can be subsequently significantly higher than existing residential development in that area. So a new home comes in, it's required to be at that level. We require a stem wall And what we're finding is that developers, when they start to build these things, they are building a stem wall, but they're also bringing in fill to grade the property to allow easier access to the property. That causes, again, in a rain event, a reversal of the previous flows and a resultant flooding of neighboring properties. So our proposal, staff's proposal in this, bearing in mind the complaints and the solutions that we often negotiate after the event and outside our code requirements, is to, to encourage the limiting of fill, to require gutters on roofs, and then to promote a number of different options. And these aren't the only options that could be available. Exfiltration, French drains, or rainwater gardens along the boundaries. There are other options that are available, and those would be designed and recommended by registered engineers, and they would be then considered as part of the building permit and reviewed by, if necessary, external engineers to determine how they worked. So yes, if those were in place and we had a stormwater event, hopefully most of that water would be captured by the gutters and supplied to the stormwater management pieces that were available and installed already. And then hopefully, bearing in mind we would have had a engineered, designed stormwater management plan for that infill lot, would be able to cope with some significant water. So our standards we're proposing is a topographical survey that extends beyond the lot property line, and it also looks at what's going on around that area, so we can the engineer can get a good grasp of what's the historic situation in that area. And from that, the engineer would design a stormwater lot grading plan, and that would be submitted with the building permit. Our standards also encourage and require lot fill be limited, that construction of a stem wall or extended footers or other approved method of foundation be used. It requires installation of roof gutters that discharge into rain gardens, French drains, or other approved method of stormwater treatment. And quite importantly, if the residential infill lot has a waterfront, then a buffered shoreline or other approved method for preventing excessive stormwater runoff into the water body should be required. And so that's the recommendation. There is, there are concerns out there that this is going to increase the cost of home development. There is obviously an increased cost in doing all these things, but there's also an increased cost in trying to settle these things after the event, and cost of staff time and commission time to, try and resolve these issues. So that's our proposal, and we're recommending obviously that we move forward with this.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. I have a question from Commissioner McDonald.
Yeah, first of all, I think this is something that we absolutely need to do. We, and a little bit of, I recall we actually, on some of the cottage lots, we were actually tried to fix some of these problems with the stem wall a number of years ago, but I had no idea that they would go in and fill in the fill dirt around the stem walls, which is unfortunate. It is also unfortunate about the added cost of doing this. But unfortunately, it has to be what it has to be, because if you're one of the neighbors that live next door and and as we've seen, especially with the rain that we've received recently, if you're receiving all of your neighbors' water and your house is having flooding issues because someone built a house next to you, that's not fair either. So I'm going to go ahead and move approval. I think that you guys have done good work, and let's hope maybe this one actually fixes it, because in hope that contractors don't figure out a way to get around it to save money, so.
Okay, I have a motion for approval. Do I have a second for discussion?
Second for discussion, I have a couple questions for staff.
And if I could just at this time, respond to Commissioner Clark's comments at the beginning of the meeting when she mentioned that we were contacted by someone who contacted her. The person sent us an email and then followed up with a fairly lengthy telephone call today and
I can't hear you, Mr. Mortel, I'm sorry.
followed up with a fairly lengthy telephone call today. And as Commissioner Clark can assure you, she is very expressive. In any event, her primary concern was that the original draft of our ordinance had our building inspector taking on the responsibility of an engineer, but Kevin has already changed that. And as you can see in the second heading, he's changed it to a engineer's stormwater lot grading plan, which is the original draft that she was calling on, said that the building inspector would be responsible for determining the sufficiency. So that's resolved in this first reading. She did have other comments. They weren't as specific as the practicing engineering without a license concern. She did applaud the commission for moving forward and said it's important to do some stormwater, but she also said that we needed to make sure that it was in compliance with South Florida and other issues, which obviously we will. I just wanted to mention it moving forward because Commissioner Clark had raised it at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Matheson, for making the motion. And I wanted to say that I did receive these comments and I did send them to the city attorney. They're also in my my email. They did come to my other email and I sent them to my city email. And she had 7 points. I don't know if I need to read them in the record, but I will specifically pull out that one with the 7 points and give it to the city clerk so that she can have it as her official comment to us. I think she made other emails and probably made, maybe it's the email that went to you, Mr. Mortel, that had the 7 points. So maybe if Mr. Mortel could just submit that for the record, I think that will be sufficient. And I believe we're taking care of it. I think people are concerned about stormwater and what happens, and this is the exact reason why we're doing what we're doing, and we're trying our best to make this work. And of course, we know that each lot is going to have to be treated a certain way, but when we have our building officials and our engineers, private as well as city engineer on the matter, we hope that things will always work out for the best to make sure that whatever is being submitted, whether it's a rain garden or the drainage plan, that all those things meet the proper requirements. And I'm really glad that there's somebody who is looking at what we're doing here in the city of Stuart, even though they're not from the city of Stuart.
And Mr. Mayor, since Commissioner Clark or Vice Mayor Clark brought that up, I prefer if I could just read the 7 points into the record.
Yes,
They're
I
very
did have
short.
the 7 points
them
also,
right here.
but read them.
Yeah, Mr. Mortel, before you do, I just wanted to correct the record. It was a motion by Commissioner McDonald and a second by Commissioner Matheson. Yes,
Okay,
please.
read the 7 points. Thank you.
Number one, inconsistent with proper engineering practice. Number two, inconsistent with Florida statutes governing the practice of engineering. Number three, lack of coordination with water table monitoring and sea level rise.
Mhm.
Number four, inconsistency with the provisions of the South Florida Water Management District for Chapter 40E-400, no notice and noticed general environmental resource permits. Number five, impropriety, collusion with engineering vendors. Number six, reliance on documents prepared by planners and not professional engineers with a depth of history of forensic water resource management. Number seven, reliance on language appropriating responsibility to third parties for deliberate acts, arbitrary and capricious acts of the building department. And I'll just comment that after the telephone call, as it related to water table monitoring and sea level rise and South Florida water management, that's why we actually have the elevation, because what happens is we have to do the floodplains and then we have to make the houses 18 inches above the crown of the road. And as a result, although the code doesn't actually say it in it, the fact that it's 18 inches above the crown of the road comes from the coordination with those entities.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel.
So I have, Mr. Mayor, a
Yes,
question
Commissioner.
for staff. I mean, is this going to pertain to every house, or is there going to be a way for an applicant, a developer, to prove that the property sits maybe out of a floodplain? He's not bringing in any fill. And is he going to have to go the whole 9 yards and hire an engineer for every single, for every single property in the city of Stuart? Or is there a way to prove that, some properties are going to be exempt, so to say?
Well, we're requiring for any residential, that's single family or duplex development that's new in the city, to go through this process. And the process starts with a study of what goes on in that area, and then an engineer, a registered and qualified engineer, coming up with a stormwater lot grading plan. Now, if that's a plan that doesn't require any of these things to be added because of the natural elevations and conditions of that area, then they would obviously, in your example, be able to show on the lot grading plan that would suffice. They would still be required to maintain the 18-inch above the crown of the road. So they would, and this gives that leeway in that we're saying it doesn't have to be the specific modules that we're proposing, the rain gardens or French drains or the other things. If they can come up with an alternative that satisfies a review by the city's engineer, and that would be either the city engineer himself or an external consultant who's a qualified engineer. And if that was agreed, then that would be satisfactory. The whole intent of this and purpose of this is to offset any future problems that neighbors could face in terms of new development coming in that is within an existing neighborhood.
So I 100% see the need for this. But I can envision some properties around the city that might already be above the 18 inches above the grade of the road. They're out of the floodplain. They're not going to have an issue. I guess my wonder is if they could pay for the topographical survey, is this something where our city engineer perhaps could give an okay to sign off on, or no, this should go to an outside professional engineer because I don't feel comfortable. You need a real plan of that. Is there something an option like that could be worked in before second readings? We're balancing mistakes from the past and also the need for affordable housing in our infill lots as well.
Yes, we're speaking with the building official. We will not be applying additional fees to single family or duplex permits. If there are additional reviews required from external consultants, that would be taken care of through the building department and the permit fee fund.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner McDonald.
I think it's more of trying to address. I think what happens is that a lot of times with especially with these small lots and the small setbacks, when they go in and do the infill, because I saw this happen, and there's one house in particular on 5th Street, right behind Jenny Sherlock's office.
Yep.
That was one where it was a small cottage lot. They went in, they built it up, and then the two neighbors on either side
came low.
And so that was when we went back and we tried doing the stem wall, some stem wall ordinance, not knowing that they would just go ahead and do the stem wall and then fill it in because they didn't want to put a set of stairs, or maybe they wanted to make it better for landscaping or whatever reason they were doing it. And so it's on the larger lots, probably I'll use an example, even where I live or you live isn't so bad. Over in like St. Lucie Estates, where you have a larger setback, it's not quite as, even with the higher elevation of the finished floor, it's not so bad. But it's on those, especially on those 50-foot wide lots, like it becomes a little more challenging to keep the water from running over to the neighbors. I don't know if that helps you at all.
Well, it does, I guess. It's just that this is gonna include any of the larger undeveloped lots. And some of those, I get, you know, the lot on Fifth Street, I'm aware of that, where they brought in Phil and basically made their adjacent neighbors
Yeah.
lower. But there's gonna, I'd like our staff to consider a way that you have some of these larger lots where the topography of the land isn't gonna be changed much. And maybe even, you know, they don't have to bring in any fill at all. As it would turn out, the driveway was naturally gonna slope up 18 inches to where the house is. Is there a route that, you know, perhaps an outside engineer or our engineer could see? I understand requiring the survey, but a route, you know, to lessen the cost.
I can tell you that our engineer cannot provide engineering opinion for a private owner and be liable for their stormwater problems for the next 30 years.
Okay.
And Commissioner, to clarify, one of the suggestions is that the lot fill shall be limited to the minimum determined by stormwater. So this is not, I mean, in your case, if they don't need to bring fill in because it's a higher elevation property, I mean, it's already, they don't need to add any fill. This
But
isn't,
they're still gonna have to go out, do the topographical survey and consult with an engineer.
But if they build a big house, that takes up a lot of the pervious, it makes it large pervious, it may cause, even in a larger lot, it can cause stormwater runoff. And just like in a commercial site. So.
I understand. I know where you're
I
shooting,
agree with you on the
Commissioner.
cost. I mean,
The problem is that, you know, I think if we open the door too wide, then people
They'll
will
take advantage.
self-certify and take advantage of it. We got to protect the existing neighbors, and I think, you know, and I agree with you. We do what we can to try to keep costs low so housing can be more affordable. But we also have to balance that against
mistakes of the past.
Yeah.
it also goes into the resiliency planning that we're doing. This is actually kind of part of it. And so, I mean, when we start really getting into more resiliency planning later, we're going to really be talking about cost. This is going to be fairly minimal.
Yep.
Can I say something, Mr.?
Yes, Vice Mayor. I have a few questions.
Mr. Commissioner McDonald is talking about cost, and I know Mr. Freeman said that, you know, the cost, the fees themselves wouldn't change, but effectively when you're doing infill especially in an old area that has a lot of little spaces for infill, those small 50-foot lots, I'm thinking about like East Stuart, for example. I mean, those are it will cost those people probably the amount of money that you would pay for a lot, you know, just to pay for the infill to fill that. But again, we are trying to work with taking care of mistakes and trying to deal with you know, how best we can develop with the properties and what has happened in the past. So it will affect people, and when they come in with these infill plans, then we'll see the cost then.
Kev, is this in effect for areas that both have stormwater infrastructure and without? Because like East Stuart has stormwater infrastructure, and I know the recent Habitat houses did not bring in fill.
Well, I think if we could have a provision in this, and I hear where you're coming from here. And I think that in circumstances where an engineer, we're still going back to an engineer signing off that everything works. And I understand if we've got existing stormwater infrastructure in place, there still can be something happening in that area that overloads that, or doesn't direct the water to the managed infrastructure, that it diverts it through whatever they're building to neighbors rather than the infrastructure that's in place. It's very difficult to get around the fact that there's going to be it's going to be needed some sort of lot survey and an engineer's grading plan to give us confidence that it's actually been looked at. And there is also, as one side of this, there is a cost to importing fill. So, you know, there is a development cost to importing fill onto a property. And if we're saying that instead of, instead of expending monies to import fill, you actually look at reducing that cost and putting that expenditure on something else. I've not discussed this with the building official, but I'm wondering if there's a scope to have a grant for these type of properties to apply for a grant to get an independent engineer to do a lot grading plan before they came in.
You keep stealing the words out of my mouth, Mr. Freeman. Yeah, I was going to suggest this could potentially be an idea for a new CRA program for certain folks, and there may even be covered by SHIP. I know there's certain things that could be done with other agencies as well. My questions are just more general and in line with the language in section 1 II. We say we want to prevent excessive stormwater runoff. I don't know if it's worth trying to clarify that a little bit more. I mean, I'm sure that since an engineer will be required to, but I don't know what bar we're setting for the engineer. And then I don't know enough about the terminology here, but stem wall, extended footers, or other method of foundation, like houses on stilts.
Yes.
Would that be considered
Yes.
Part of that? Okay, because I'd like for that to be an option. And then when we're talking about French rain gardens, French drains, French drains specifically might be an opportunity where we can tie into existing stormwater infrastructure. I mean, French drains have to go somewhere too.
Yeah.
So, in the example that you had there before, you could dig a French drain, but it conveys water to somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that the French drain alone, to me, is can't be a sole stormwater management method, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's above my pay grade. I think I understand. I think all of us are pretty much in agreement. We understand that we need to protect existing residents. We have to be smarter about our infill. We have to prepare for climate change and what that means. Not only are we going to have more extensive rain events, it may cost us a little bit more money, but it costs more upfront and saves a lot more money down the road, especially when it comes to those neighboring property owners. So, yes, Vice Mayor.
I have a question. I don't know if our city engineer is here, but maybe your building official or Mr. Freeman can answer that. It's just a follow-up on your question, Mr. Mayor, with regard to that item number II, signed and sealed engineer, and that excessive stormwater runoff term. Is there a measurement standard based on the grade and slope of the land or the lot size as to how much stormwater should be held or run off from that area, and so that we can know what is excessive or what is not? Is there a measurement level that I don't know about? I'm not a stormwater engineer.
We would look at a stormwater year event, a 100-year event, and then sort of mark it to one of those.
You're going by that
yeah.
standard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Perhaps we can ask for public comment. I know Ms. Marcella Campbell has. You did? Okay. I was hoping for your. I was gonna. Can I summon you? And some of your planning expertise, Ms. Campbell.
I was tempted to comment, but then I said I really made a mistake. So I think staff is on the right track. And if we go back to before we started building on slab, on the little mound from the 50s onward, every single Florida vernacular type was built either on stilts or what we do today on a stem wall. One of the main recommendations, and you said it, Commissioner, for adaptation and mitigation is to go back to the time-tested types where you elevate the unit and you don't touch the land. So I think, they're in the right path to try to limit that as much as possible. In a big project that we are doing out west, we had a LiDAR map, sort of, it's an aerial photograph that gives you topo of the entire 3,400 acres. It wasn't very expensive. It gave topo to the foot in some areas even closer. It was really not something expensive. And it's something that just can get uploaded to the city's website if you identify those areas. So, I mean, I support going back to authentic building types and raising the building, no need for fill unless it's your driveway or there's an ADA situation. And, and start preparing for adaptation mitigation. But the city could do a tighter LiDAR. The county already has a LiDAR that covers this area. You could add on to that for not too much, and it would help someone see what their lot
I
has.
think we have access to that.
Yeah, the county's is sometimes it's every 50 feet or every 20 feet, depending on the area. You can take it down to a foot, and it's not expensive.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Before we call the vote, I'm sorry, I did neglect one thing I wanted to clarify. In the infill development, this is only pertaining to single family in infill and duplex developments.
Yes.
Are we properly covered with larger scale developments, multifamily PUD?
Well, they would normally come in as major developments or PUDs, and that would would really be quite very detailed in the examination.
Usually the stormwater
when it comes
requirement.
forward, yeah, there's usually a full engineering involved with that, and that is really not an issue at the moment. What we do find is even those developments, as you know, reveal inherent historic water issues that are caused by systems that are not functioning as they should.
So is it worth it for us to just to cover our bases, include multifamily? Because I mean, we still have some infill projects, even though the intent is to deal with these tiny little single family, small lot projects.
Multifamily and PUDs must maintain stormwater on site. We either have Captech Engineering or Kimley Horn. Actually, we pay on every single one of them to have their engineering drawings reviewed by
Multifamily?
our engineers before they even get to you.
Even straight zoning multifamily.
It would be required anyway.
Okay.
Any over 5 units is considered commercial, and any commercial has to have its own stormwater covered.
Okay.
There would be full engineering on those.
Mr. Mayor, quick question for staff, or almost a suggested direction, if we could contemplate maybe looking at a larger CRA wide or, urban area wide topographic study that the city would have on file, as Ms. Campbell said, so that, homeowners to lessen the cost in any way possible.
Yes.
And if we could also, between now and second reading, consult with a couple of the engineers that we use, and maybe we could have a list of engineers that when home builders are coming, that they could reference, and these engineers would know specifically what the city is looking for to perhaps lessen the cost on the builder.
I have a concern about us recommending specific engineers. I think I don't have any problem doing the topo study. I think it should be outside of this ordinance. That's probably a CRA board's decision because there's going to be a cost to that. And so I think that that's something that could be brought back to the CRA or to the city commission to be discussed. So I think that it's not really from a cost perspective and in a payment perspective. I think this is outside the scope of this ordinance. Now, back to and then just as far as recommending engineers, I don't think that the city should get involved in recommending one engineer over another.
I agree on the recommending certain engineers. I guess what I'd like is our staff to consult with a few engineers and basically get it in their language of real specific what the city's looking for.
I'm fine
To
with
do any way
Yeah.
possible to lessen their time, almost if there could be a standard form that any applicants coming into, oh, well, take this to your engineer. This is going to explain exactly what we're looking for. Here it is to lessen the amount of time the engineer has to spend on the project. You see what I'm
Yes,
saying?
I think there are a number of options that staff can explore prior to second reading
do
that
hear
would, I think the major aim of this is to reduce the cost as far as possible.
I hear
to
what you're
have
saying about
resources in-house to
private
enable that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. I'd like to move this along. Do we have any public comment on this? Mr. Campenny, if you'll kindly fill out a green card.
It just appears to me that you're sort of rushing. You don't know if it's gonna cost $1,000, $20,000, because an engineer has to certify what he's doing. And he may be sued if it doesn't work out. So instead of rushing into it tonight, you may wanna speak to some engineers as Commissioner Matheson recommended, and then see whether there's a different way of accomplishing the same thing. Because if on an infill project, if you want to add $10,000 or $20,000 to it, you may make it so that that little house that you're trying to build on that 50-foot lot becomes more and more expensive, and fewer people that we want in the city can afford it. So that would be my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comment online?
Is the person who, is this the one where Ms. Hoover made the comments? Yes. She's not online, Mr. Paul? Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Ask her.
Ms. Hall?
Yes, yeah, I just want to remind everybody, regardless of your political persuasion, there is climate change. We see the fires, we see the hurricanes. I like what we're trying to do, when we build in the future and we talk about our past mistakes, but I want to make sure that we also are looking at what's already here, what would be in a potential flood zone. I went to the Martin County meeting 3 or 4 weeks ago. They had a wonderful presentation. So we know this is coming and we have to stop ignoring it. So we have to worry about what's coming, but we have to worry about what's here, our houses that are in potential flood zones, and not guess if it's going to happen or not. We are going to get more floods. We are going to get more natural disasters. And so this is something we can spend money on, okay? And I appreciate you guys all being out there watching out for us, but there is a climate change and we have to stop ignoring it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Before I call the vote, I just wanted to say I appreciate Mr. Campenny's comment, and I understand where he's coming from. I think I'm ready to move this past first reading. And in the meantime, before second reading, I think, yes, it's a good idea to speak with engineers, and we can make the final decision then, but we've got to start moving forward. That's my take on it. You know, there's got to be some level of expertise involved in the process. You can't just stick your finger in the air and so maybe there's another way around this, but I'm going to work hard. We should work hard to figure that out before second reading. Ms. Kendall, if you call the roll, please.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Mayor Meyer?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, and we'll move on to our final item of the evening before D&D, our land development text amendment R2 and R3 zoning districts. Mr. Mortel.
This is ordinance number 2454, 2020. An ordinance of the city of Stuart, Florida, amending section 2.04.00 of the Land Development Code entitled Area Impervious Surface Setback and Height Requirements of Chapter 2, Table 5, entitled Residential Area Impervious Surface Coverage Setbacks and Height Requirements, and section 2.04.02 of the Land Development Code entitled Supplemental Requirements in respect of standards for lot size, lot width, and building setbacks for the R2 and R3 zoning districts, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Stephen Mayer, Development Department. This item was in response, staff, this is in response to the challenges that staff faces in terms of infill development. And staff took a look at our land development code and took a look at our comp plan and found that our land development code in the R2 and R3 zoning setbacks tended to discourage single family development in those zones. And in order to get the maximum amount of density, you would almost have to develop multifamily, which we didn't think was very good for the opportunities of infill development being open for a variety of housing rather than just multifamily. So when we took a look at that, the ordinance affects every R2 and R3 lot, and in the future subdivisions, redevelopment or development of vacant properties, for instance. The lots within existing duplex or those non-residential lots in R3 will not be affected by the change. This is really only talking about R2 and R3 single family use. No lots would be made non-conforming by the change. It's actually making it less restrictive. There are approximately 24 of those 309 R2 lots that appear to be able to utilize a lot split because of this zoning change without buying additional lots and combining them to form larger frontage or areas. And then only six of those 24 are vacant at this point in time, or have a house on one side of that lot so that they could do that without demolishing anything. In the R3, there's approximately 8 that could reasonably utilize the lot splits without buying other lots or demolishing existing uses that are on the site. So in terms of reasonableness, we don't see a very large effect in the very short term, but maybe in the long term, as lots may be redeveloped, they could redevelop in this fashion instead. The location of the R2 and R3 zones are on those two maps. You can see primarily in the R2, they consist of 2 large duplex areas, which we don't anticipate that this change would affect. It also has an area that is on Dixie, which has 90-foot lots, so that they would not be able to subdivide unless an owner bought a lot and they could divide it in, but that really wouldn't make too much sense if they did that. So we don't really see the reasonable factor here, but we do see a reasonable factor in this area in Stipman 5th, in the R2 zoned property, that there are a few, like I mentioned, 24 or so lots that that there might be able to utilize this to split and create additional single family housing out of their lots. In the R3 district, many of these have multifamily complexes that are already built. They also have areas of commercial. So there aren't very many areas. Like I said, there might be 8. Most of them are concentrated in this area and this area. And there's a few, there's one here that's a vacant lot that could be utilized to create single family lots. Instead, at this point, they would not be able to get very many. So the existing lot area width and setback regulations, this table is what's being changed. The areas that are highlighted are the areas that are being changed. There's primarily 3 areas where we're looking at, which is the lot area, the width, and the setbacks, and primarily the side setbacks, which we're taking a look at. One thing I want to make as a clarification, or just something that staff noted and we wanted to fix, is that for the duplex and the single, for the duplex and the, for the duplex areas, the code currently has 75 feet, which it seems for a duplex, you'd have to clarify that that's a 75 feet for both of them, not for each duplex. If they were to subdivide the lots of a duplex and create a divising wall, they wouldn't be 75 for each of the lots, it'd be 75 combined. So we wanted to make that clarification that that's what that meant. Also with the setbacks, similarly, it meant it was 10 feet. But if there was going to be a divising wall and you're going to separate those into two lots, two duplex PCN numbers, that one setback where they share the wall would actually be a 0, not 10. So we just wanted to make that clarification as we were in this table to make sure that that's known for the duplex and for the townhomes that are possible in R3 as well, that setback would be 0 if you were to create lots. Now for focusing back onto the real point of what we were trying to accomplish, the minimum lot area is currently 6,000 for R2 and R3. We would like to change that to be the maximum amount allowed in the density of the land use of those zoning areas. For R2, it's primarily residential low, which allows 8.7 units per acre, and that it equates to a 5,000 square foot lot and a 50-foot width to accommodate that 5,000. Also to note, many of those R2 areas, I have some plats of areas that I could show you that has the underlying plats of these lots were 50 foot to begin with. So it's kind of a historic nature of many of our older neighborhoods that they started out with 50-foot lots and then were later combined to 100-foot lots. Now, as people are beginning to downsize, we do see a pressure to try to split these lots back into 50-foot lots again. But our current doesn't allow it. It's stuck at 60 feet. So that actually prevents them from splitting it back into two. There would be an adjustment of the setback from 7.5 when you had the 60-foot to a 5-foot setback on either side, which is just an adjustment essentially to try to compensate for the smaller lot. And then for R3, it would be 6,000 to 4356, which is in the land use for those R3 are typically either residential multifamily or residential office, and both of those land uses allow for 10 units per acre. That would equate to 4,360, about 56 square feet per lot. Again, 50 feet lot width to compensate for that, and a change from 8 foot to 5 foot on the side setback, also to compensate for the smaller lot width that we will allow. There is also a section in the code that is right after that table, which mandates that the lots are no smaller than 6,000 square feet and 60 feet. We want to change that obviously to be consistent with our changes. So staff and CRB recommends approval. Sorry, that is LPA. I apologize. Staff and LPA recommended approval of the text amendment. And that concludes the staff presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I turn it over to Vice Mayor Clark, can you just bring back up the table of proposed changes so we can be looking at it while we ask? Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem with moving ordinance number 2454-2020 forward if I can get a second, but I also have a question.
I'll second it.
Thank you. My question was with regard to the lot sizes. When we have those setbacks, the setback is always from the edge of the lot size and any easement that's in between these lots or an easement on the lot, whether they're utility easements, they're included. It's not from the edge of the easement, it's from the lot, the edge of the lot line.
That's correct.
The setback is measured from the lot line. If there's an easement across the property, that doesn't include the lot line, but if there's a right of way, then it's from the edge of the right of way.
I just to be sure.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner McDonald?
So when I was studying this agenda item, I had a little bit of deja vu because I think it was 2017, we actually redid this whole section of our comp plan and
Mr. Mayor did it.
Pardon?
Mr. Mayor did it.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And just a little history. Back in the 90s, when the 90s, early 2000s, the city did a lot of annexation. County sued us a million times, or well, 15. I think it was 15 lawsuits. We won all of them. There was there was a comp plan challenge by the county, and it said that we did not have a density number or something to that effect. So the city commission in 2003, Mike would know more about what date it was. They came back and they said, okay, we're just going to overlay the county's density map over the city. Well, ends up it was wrong for what was already existing. And in 2017, and actually I believe it started over off of Stipman and high school in 6th, when actually Reed Hartman, I believe, wanted to build some properties. Plus there was I think Medalist Homes was building some homes, if I remember correctly. I'm looking at Tom, and there was some issues. And so we went and we redid all of these numbers. And as we have this chart up there, I'm having a lot of remembrance of this specific chart. So, and we had some pushback about the smaller lot sizes at the time. We also did this to make it so that the single family homes could be built on some of these lots. We increased the density actually significantly at the time, and in order to get these numbers from like 3.5 to like 6.7 or something. And again, please don't hold me exactly to the numbers. So if this is a fix of the fix, I want to make sure that it fixes the fix versus screwing up the screw up. So there's my concern about this. I do personally have some concern about the lot size and especially the 5-foot setbacks. The small lots with the 5-foot setbacks. But I'd really like to hear from staff. And I spoke with Kevin about this when I realized what it was. So look forward to hearing about what their thoughts are, maybe Mr. Mortel as well, because I know
I can tell you that, first of all, I give Stephen a lot of credit for what he went through in 2017, because you're right, it was an
tough.
arduous task, and he did a very good job.
We had multiple workshops on that.
I don't know that this is really a fix of that as much as it's a demand that we're getting from the R2 and R3 residents. And there were members of the LPA board that live in these R2 type residents that were expressing the desire to bring it forward, and actually caused it to come up because they want to be able to do these types of infills in their neighborhoods. At least that was my take on it. I would ask Steve to comment.
Yeah, I think you worded that very well. I appreciate that, Mr. Martell. It's not really a fix of a fix, because this stands separate, but we did change the density at that time to reflect what we were seeing in the neighborhood, because our densities in our comp plan were out of whack with some of the actual variances that we were providing. And so we wanted to fix that, and that's what that accomplished, in 2017. This is now doing that kind of does allow us to do this, which is to singularly focus on single family and make that equally an option in these zoning districts. Because essentially, in order to get the same kind of density as single family, you wouldn't be able to do it under our current numbers. You would have to have a 60-foot lot. If you wanted to do a duplex, you only needed a 75 lot, and you get 2 units versus a 60-foot lot and 1 unit. So what are you going to do if you have the ability to divide the lot? You're going to possibly then get the 75 and just do a duplex. But then you're not giving the person an option to try to get to single family, in other words.
Well, like you said, I'm bringing up, not that I oppose the ordinance.
Right.
I just want to make sure that we're accomplishing the goal of what we're trying to do. So
Yes. I think the 2017 was a goal that was accomplished. And then we've initiated this one as a separate goal to encourage single family and at least allow that to occur in equal parts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner. Yes, Vice Mayor?
It's just a commentary. Probably Mr. Campani is gonna disagree with me. I'm calling him out. No, it's just that, I hear so much about development and that we're easy on development and that we're we're just, people have, when we go through things like this and when Troy brings up the history, you see how difficult it is and how hard sometimes we have to try to even allow some things to be developed. And maybe people do have good reasons. They've had a small lot beside them for a long time. And it's important, and those are valuable. So it's not just the big guys that we plan for and that we work with. And we do have to spend time trying to make sure that we can get some of this stuff right and get it in there too also. So it's just, that's just a commentary. I just wanted to let people know that we are trying to put our time and our consideration in.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I just wanted to follow up. I appreciate the discussion around this being a fix versus standing alone. For me, I saw this arising out of our discussion to help encourage more small cottage lots, more infill development projects. But I also am a little concerned about the singular focus on single family. I'm seeing this as a way for us to, approach how do we get to sort of that missing middle bit of development where right now Stuart has that missing middle. We don't have it in our city. It's just single family homes and it's these larger apartment complexes.
The
And
missing
so
middle. I love it.
I'm looking for how does this code appropriately address our ability to take some of the larger infill lots and not like multi-acre, but larger infill lots, and have us do some of the smaller multifamily that that I think our citizens are asking us for. We can't just have single family and then these much larger apartment buildings. Consider that lovely 8-unit, or maybe it's even a 4. I think it's 8 on West Ocean, that old historic on West Ocean, and I believe it's on Akron. Smaller, compact developments, multifamily in infill settings. That's what we need more of. And so I'm encouraged when I see these sorts of changes, because I'm looking at ways that we can accomplish those more and have them be more graceful in our, well, first of all, that we can have them at all, and then that they can be a little bit more gracefully inserted into our urban district. Commissioner?
Yeah. I'm sitting here listening to commissioners, and this isn't 2017. This, and what we have accomplished in the last 3 years. I mean, we got new commissioners, we got a new way of doing things, or not a new way of doing things. We're doing so much in the smaller and walking up and down the streets in the neighborhoods. And I got a wonderful email, and we talked, Mela, and she really has some great ideas. And I think that this is where we want to go. I feel this with this stack of commissioners, or whatever you want to call our group. But anyway, I just wanted to say that this is totally different. This is what we've been wanting. This is what I've been wanting for many years. So, thank you.
Yeah, Vice Mayor.
And while we're at this, Mr. Freeman, I've lost the agenda item. While we're at this ordinance number 2454-2020, I have brought up, and I think Mr. Freeman has promised us to try to bring up, and we're going to work with the East Stewart Urban Code. And that is something that I think will bring to light a lot of things that we might need to do to really deal with some of these lots and in a particular way, and maybe use that as a great example to try to maximize and deal with some of this area. So, yeah.
I would like, I know you're going to be outreaching with some questions later on. And I think if we could incorporate some questions that actually started to encourage these thoughts in East Stewart. We have the code ready, bearing in mind it's very appropriate in terms of how it synergizes with this and the local community. I think if we can arrange the questions to really focus where we need the answers and to encourage staff to move forward. I think you know yourself, getting the trust of that community is going to be the most important piece. Whatever staff suggests, I think we need to show that we are talking the same language that the community wants us to talk.
Commissioner Matheson, did you have a question?
Just real quick, I support this and the direction it's going. Just for clarification though, if I was in R2 and wanted to build a duplex, I'd have to have a 75-foot wide lot, correct?
That's correct.
In that same 75-foot lot as it stands now, could I build 2 small cottages?
No.
No. So just some food for thought, Mayor and Commissioners. That's something that you touched on, the missing middle. For me, and I think that the charm of Stuart isn't necessarily a duplex, but something that I'd be interested in having our staff pursue would be if they fit those same qualifications of that 75-foot wide lot in R2, that, you know, I imagine in my mind 2 700, 800 square foot cottages that would mimic what we see in Potsdam. But right now, the definition of a duplex is they have to have an adjoining, I believe, one roof or a common wall. And, you know, maybe our staff could contemplate, you know, that missing middle that you're talking about, Mayor, in regard to our codes on duplexes, but also there would have to be some limitations where, you know, they couldn't resplit the duplexes and sell them off. I'm not sure going micro, but that's an issue for me that I think all residents of Stuart would rather probably see the direction we're heading with smaller cottage style lots than your standard duplex.
Yes.
But I do support this as it is. I was just throwing that out there for some.
Mr. Freeman, did you want to address that?
Yeah, I think this brings into focus maybe a discussion on accessory dwelling units, because implementing that sort of code is a way of actually incrementally, quite quickly gaining that sort of product with a number of single family homes that we have, with the space that they may have behind them, and the restrictions that we have on the use of those accessory dwelling units or the size of those accessory dwelling units, I think is a whole new piece that could address your concerns.
Okay. Thank you. Before, maybe we'll take some public comment. I do have one card from Ms. Cambler. If there are any other folks here that would like to make comment, please submit one.
Sorry, thank you. Just wanted to say a couple of things. I do support this amendment. I've been trying, I'm one of those, by the way, I did own that building. It's the Sunrise Building on Camden and West Ocean. The amendment is great because I've been trying, I'm one of those R3 lots. I've been trying to do a bungalow court for a long time. I have 10 units and a little over an acre lot, and my only path was a PUD, and then by the time I was done with all of the things I had to set aside, I was better off trying to go to 30 units to the acre and do a multifamily building, and I don't want to do that. So I support what you're doing, by the way, to address what you just said, Commissioner Matheson. A 35-foot wide lot is a perfectly acceptable cottage lot in urban codes, so just for staff, if you want to do cottage lots instead of duplex. But I want to throw just a little wrench. If you look at the table, it's table 5. So a 10,000 square foot lot, which is your R1A, your biggest lots in the city, have a 15-foot rear setback. And the tiniest lot that we are now adopting has a 20-foot setback. So I'm just going to propose 2 additional changes, suggest them, so that we take the 15-foot setback that R1 and R2 have on the rear, same to R3, given especially that R3 would end up being the smallest lot. But fundamentally, with a 25-foot front setback and a 20-foot rear setback, that's 53% of the site is on a setback. When you add the side setbacks, 60% of your site is on setbacks, and it just throws out the door the possibility or the efficiency. Second one, and this one may be like wilder, I would suggest changing the 25 to 20. I don't think the line, I mean, again, that would be more consistent with what happens in the Potsdam. Usually that 25 can be encroached with a 10-foot porch. I mean, if you're in a corner lot, you're allowed to have 25 on one side and 10 on the other. So given the size of the lots, if with a 20 in the front and a 15 in the rear, it would bring the impact of setbacks down to 40% of the site, which is what all your other categories have. So I know it was a lot of math in 3 minutes or less, but it was a suggestion for staff. I know. Sorry. Thank you. But
Thank you,
thanks
Ms.
for doing
Gambler.
Thank you.
Kevin, is that something that I could add to this now and
yes.
change my motion to include
It certainly is.
Gambler's suggestion on that stuff?
Yep.
We can discuss.
I
it.
understand that calculation, and it seems to make sense now it's been broached.
I'll amend my motion. I think Ms. Bruner on this. Was one second. I she wants to.
Yeah, I second. I second your amendment.
So for come back for a second reading, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They'll come back for.
Let's clarify for Ms. Kindle.
You want to amend your motion to the setbacks and be specific to what Mrs. Campbell said?
Yes, ma'am.
To the minimum rear setback for R2 and R3 to be 15 like it is for R1A, for the minimum front setback for R3 to be 20 instead of 25.
Yes.
Is that correct? Mr. Meyer?
Motion and second, and I have another public comment.
I have a question. I'm assuming that the R represents residential, but you know what they say about people assuming. So rather than to assume, I'm just asking for some clarification and a better understanding as a lay person, so I don't get all this stuff. I want to know, where are the R2, this thing just, and the R3 lots located? And I'm not understanding where are they located? Where's R2 and R3 as far as the city? Is it East Stuart? Over in what we call White Town? Where is it located?
Ms. Hall-Brinkley, why don't you ask if there's any more questions you have, rather than answering back and forth like I can't do
Well,
anymore?
I just
We'll
want to know
address it
where they're
after.
located. And I think I pretty much understand that. I don't understand the whole idea of what you're talking about doing with those lots, as far as the homeowners or the lot owners are concerned. What are they going to be able to do with those lots under this ordinance?
Okay, I think that's a good thing for us to just be reminded of before we call for the vote. So up on the screen for my colleagues is we have maps here of where the R2 and R3 are. On the left is the R2, so it's impacting the highlighted sections there. And then on the R3 property, we've got in yellow, that's throughout the entire city. Although I don't believe that for R3, it's 62,000 acres, because that's 90, it's 100 square miles.
That's interesting.
That's a lot of acres.
Yeah.
I think we just took all of Martin County.
But I'm still not understanding, where are they? Is R2 from the railroad tracks to Palm Beach Road, Martin Luther King to 10th Street or
throughout
is
the
it?
city. They're all over the
Yeah, I'm sorry, Miss.
roads?
We'll talk after. We can't do the back and forth right here anymore, but you and I can sit down afterwards and go over the map.
Mr. Mayor, can Mr. City Attorney just define an R2 zone or R3 zone, either Mr. Mayor or the City Attorney, that this allows for 1 unit or 2 units?
I think the concern more is the density is what we're talking about, and what we're trying to do is make it so it's more reasonable to do these infill houses. And I think that the public comments were concerned was this going to be equitable throughout the city?
Right.
And in the East Stewart neighborhood, it should be noted that we adopted the East Stewart overlay zone that said we didn't require any minimum lot size. So in East Stewart, the much smaller lots are already available to have these cottage-sized homes built on them. So what we're really doing is kind of taking these other neighborhoods that are outside of East Stewart and bringing it toward that concept, but still a little more restricted than the East Stewart one is.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Is there any further public comment? Any online? Seeing none. Ms. Kindle, call the roll, please.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson,
Yes.
Mayor Meyer.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Okay, and we will talk about with
scooters.
our D&D.
Didn't want anyone to forget.
There's a Fort Pierce.
I forgot what it was.
Where's the picture of the phone? Yes, sir. I emailed to you guys a few minutes ago, this response, because I didn't realize that there was an Excel sheet attached that had the comments in it. So you may actually want to just have a little short discussion about this and then still review the email attach or the Excel attachment, because there are comments within that Excel attachment
Oh, you
you
got
may
it
want to review.
back. I see.
However, so in the pre-question of this, there is the outline of the definition of what the zone is, or designated zone. And in that explanation was basically from Palm Beach Road over to Colorado, towards the river, through downtown and Flagler, to give a general sense to those responding. As you can see, there's about 224 respondents on these questions. And hold on, I want to put up.
Dave, did you email us the Excel spreadsheet?
Yes, I emailed it.
It's
Oh,
page 4 of the attachment.
Page 4 of my attachment is Main Street.
Question 3, why did that one go on question 1?
I have it in my, it's one of the attachments to the email he just
There.
sent.
So this was the,
E-scooters _ XL.
yeah. So it should have the 3 JPEGs of the results and then the Excel sheet attached to it. And so the first question that went out was, should the city allow e-scooters in the designated zone of Palm Beach Road west of Colorado Avenue? And there was a more in-depth definition before you got to this question prior to getting to it. I don't know if any of you received the actual survey question to respond to. You did it twice? So
I may have done it too.
So as you can see, there's 49% answered no. There's about 11% who left comments on that particular item. The next question, should the city allow e-bikes in the above designated zone? And so as you know, that's different than the e-scooter. It's actually a battery operated bicycle. 48% said yes, with 45% saying no and 6% leaving comments. So that had a higher rate of yeses and acceptance by the 224 respondents than the e-scooters did. And then lastly, should the city allow e-scooters in the above designated zone, but not in the historic downtown area? That was a question that one of the commissioners had about allowing these scooters, but not in the historic section, allowing it down in the Arts District and other areas. And you can see overwhelmingly 70% said no. So if they were gonna have it, they wanted it throughout, with 12% leaving comments. So The Excel sheet that you have there, as you can see, has multiple comments left in it from questions 1, question 2, and question 3, and then general comments left on the question 4. And obviously, if you guys want to have the discussion now or bring it back at a later item when you have time to digest these comments, we can. But based on the survey result, I don't think it was an overwhelming yes that people want to see that. I do want to point out this line 123. Not quite sure how much Mr. Mortel paid someone to say, I think Mike Mortel is the best city attorney in the history of Stuart, but you know.
That might have been the one I filled out.
What line was that?
Line
Can we
123.
filter out his responses to all of the questions?
Did anyone else actually respond?
Thank you, Mr. Dias. What do my colleagues think? I mean, I would like just a minute to read through all of the comments before making a final decision. I mean, I can't.
For what it's worth, it's D&D, so you can't make a decision tonight anyway.
Right. And, you know,
Yeah, I am the same way now that there's this many comments. I'd prefer to.
okay.
Okay. So you can either give me individual feedback. Like I said, originally when we brought this forward, it was kind of to get some feedback from you guys on direction
Right.
For the e-scooter. So if the feeling from the commissioners, whether it's done in a D&D or individually with me, was that you want to still pursue it, then it would be an action item that would come back with the company with an agreement with them.
If I can't,
I've seen enough that I'm not interested.
okay. If I can just ask Ms. Callahan quickly, if she doesn't mind, administering the survey, would you mind just reminding me how this was distributed? Would you say, was it representative of, you know, local businesses, local tourists, our residents?
Yeah, so basically it's just the Main Street email database, which
Got
consists
it.
of residents, downtown merchants, basically our stakeholders that are within. I scrubbed that list to get a better idea of who to filter out. You know, maybe Port St. Lucie residents are on our email list. So basically the stakeholders
Okay.
should have gotten that. We have a list of about 1,300 emails. So to scrub through that, to weed out the ones that aren't really considered our stakeholders for this particular initiative.
Sure.
So,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you. And I want to thank Ms. Callahan and the Main Street for doing the survey.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for all that scrubbing. Thank you for that.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Mr. Dias and Ms. Callahan, this is something that Main Street is definitely interested in seeing, this scooter idea in the downtown, or you're just dependent on this email, or was it something that originated from a strong interest from Main Street?
I believe this actually came from the city and we were just willing to help
Yeah, we
reach
had
out
asked
to the
for-
stakeholders to get some buy-in for you. Main Street ourselves have not taken a position. I can definitely present that to the board if you'd like our input, for sure. Just let me know.
If we have time, we'd like to hear from you. At
Okay.
least I'd like to.
Okay, I'll get some feedback for you, definitely.
Thank you, Ms. Callahan. Okay, is there anything else? Thank you, Mr. Dias. Is there anything else for the good of the board, for the good of the public? Okay, well then we will adjourn at 7:55 p.m.
Sorry.